Good evening. I'm Wendy Mesley, and this is The National.
What were you praying for?
Praying for God's protection and to heal the patients also.
Adrian Arsenault is on the ground in Liberia to bring you a close-up look at the desperate fight against Ebola. One big challenge, getting workers to risk their lives. A BC teen's murder sparks outrage because of the suspect's record. Unprecedented protests in Hong Kong stir memories of another revolt. A CBC News exclusive, why European visitors to Canada got treatment fit for a queen.
There's no excuse for blowing 300 grand for what amounts to a political show.
And atheists join together on Sundays to rejoice. We'll ask our panel, what's the point? Protesters have been taking to the streets of Hong Kong by the thousands to combat the creeping influence of Beijing. Demonstrators are demanding they be allowed to chart their own course. It's a brave act of defiance in a country not known for tolerating defiance of any kind. And the crackdown by authorities is growing more brutal. Paul Hunter has that story.
The protests have been growing larger, louder, and ever more defiant. Tens of thousands of pro-democracy demonstrators facing pepper spray and tear gas as riot police have tried to quiet those intent on pressuring Beijing into granting Hong Kong full democracy. Fighting is the only thing we can do, says democracy advocate Jimmy Lai. We have no power. We can be cowards or citizens. The anger erupted last month when Beijing put strict controls on candidates vying for Hong Kong's leadership in elections set for 2017. The fear here is that that's a signal Hong Kong will never get real democracy. Consider that modern Hong Kong was never meant to face that fear. When control flipped from Britain back to China in 1997, it was agreed Hong Kong would keep many of the freedoms China denies to the rest of its people. 17 years later, that's what these protesters worry is now slipping away.
The message is Hong Kong people love democracy. They believe democracy is good for Hong Kong and certainly good for China. And they are prepared to sacrifice.
But as these protests grow, China's concern is that Hong Kong's push for democracy will spread to the communist mainland. Hence this crackdown, a reminder China rarely steps aside in the face of calls for political reform. At Beijing's Tiananmen Square in 1989, the Chinese military killed hundreds, possibly thousands, who'd been making the same kind of argument. Tonight, amid scuffles on the streets, some worry police will soon open fire with rubber bullets, or worse. Some protesters fled in the face of such rumor, but many stayed. Said one, "We will fight until the end. We will never give up." Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.